in the year 2006, after Hamas was elected, Israel killed 660 Palestinians in Gaza, including 141 children. And you see, if you look again at, to understand why Hamas was elected, you've got to look at Israel's strategy towards Fatah, which was until 2006 was the main resistance movement. It had been set up as the main, as the dominant political force in the Palestinian Liberation Organization as far back as 1964. Yasser Arafat had been, the acclaimed leader of the Palestinian national resistance. But in the course of the 1990s, in the course of the so-called peace process, Israel adopted a kind of standard imperial colonial strategy. It tried to incorporate Fatah, it tried to incorporate Yasser Arafat, tried to convert him into a colonial policeman, keeping in check the more militant elements among the Palestinians, in particular reining in the militants of Hamas. And Israel, constantly played him along, pretending to offer concessions, pretending to offer real demands, real concessions. In reality, never doing so. So during the 90s, the settlements continued to expand, the number of settlers continued to expand, and in some ways, worst of all, the Palestinian economy collapsed, making vast numbers of Palestinians completely destitute, and so completely disillusioning them in the whole peace process. So when Yasser Arafat rejected what was an offer in the summer of 2000 at the Camp David talks, it was clear, the tinder was becoming really dry, and it needed just a spark to go up in flames, and that spark was provided by, of course, the very provocative walk through the Muslim areas of East Jerusalem by Ariel Sharon. At that time, he was still Minister of Defense, and it was clearly intended, that walk through the old city, through the Muslim part of the old city, Jerusalem, was clearly intended to provoke a militant response from the Palestinians, which in turn provoked it was used by Israel as a justification for the most brutal, repressive response to the Palestinians who were demonstrating against everything that Israel had done, or indeed failed to do during those years of the so-called peace process. So what Yasser Arafat was doing was making more and more concessions to Israel. This indeed started in 1988 when Arafat and the PLO indicated that they were prepared to accept the reality of the state of Israel. And in the course of the peace process, Arafat granted more and more concessions. For example, dropping the demand of the right of return of the Palestinian refugees. There were some 2 to 3 million refugees in refugee camps in Lebanon, Syria, those who had been displaced by the ethnic cleansing of 1948. During the early part of 2000, after Hamas was elected, Israel did what it had always done. It provoked Palestinians into a response, and then used that response in order to launch a massive retaliation. In the first few months of 2006, the Israeli Air Force killed several dozen Palestinian civilians. That Hamas responded with rockets, and Israel used that response in order to launch a massive retaliation against the people of Gaza. And that's been their standard method of operating in the 60 years of the existence of the State of Israel, since 1948. So there was a brutal bombardment of Gaza, killing dozens of Gazans, destroying the economic infrastructure, destroying, for example, the power station on which the people of Gaza relied for their supply of fresh water. The Israeli Air Force also destroyed roads and bridges and blocked off the supply of food and medicines. And in fact, this is what happened last December, January. The assault wasn't just against the people and against homes and hospitals and so on. There was also a vicious attack on the infrastructure, the fields and factories and so on. So again, crippling the economy of Gaza. Israel was clearly determined to destroy the Hamas administration, just as once Yasser Arafat was no longer of use to Israel's colonial regime, Israel destroyed his administration. You remember the siege of Arafat's home, the siege by the Israeli army of the Palestinian parliament on the West Bank in Ramallah, 2003. Again, that was clearly intended to destroy the PLO, the Fatah administration, so as to be able to say that Israel has no partner for peace. Israel has no partner for peace. That means Israel has the right to impose its own unilateral solution on the Palestinians. And once Arafat made it clear that he couldn't deliver what Israel wanted, I mean, he'd done his best, and it was really very sad, very tragic to see how Arafat deteriorated, from a once proud, strong nationalist leader into this stooge of Israel, and making more and more concessions until the point came in 2000, summer 2000, when he could no longer make any more concessions to Israel's demands. Had he agreed to what was on offer in the Camp David talks, it is very likely he would have been assassinated by his own people. And so it was a risk he couldn't take, so he rejected what was on offer. Israel then decided he was no longer of any use, and he proceeded to destroy his base. And so they tried to do exactly the same thing with Hamas. And in 2007, of course, Israel colluded with Fatah, now under the leadership of Mahmoud Abbas. Israel colluded with Fatah to arm the Fatah militias who were in Gaza, and it persuaded them to try and mount a coup to overthrow the legitimate government of Hamas. That attempt at a coup failed, and it was preempted by Hamas, mainly, I think, because Hamas had the mass popular support of the vast majority of the people of Gaza. The Palestinians had seen through Fatah and what Fatah had become under Arafat, this kind of nothing better than a colonial policeman, and therefore turned to Fatah, who had revealed themselves to be a much more vigorous leadership. So that attempt at a coup, organized by an alliance of Israel and Fatah, and egged on by the United States, who supplied arms to Fatah, that attempt at a coup failed. It succeeded in the West Bank, where Fatah wasn't quite so strongly embedded, although they won a majority of the election in the West Bank as well as in Gaza. But in Gaza they had overwhelming support, I think because the people of Gaza were even more oppressed, even more downtrodden than the Palestinians of the West Bank. Downtrodden, but they resisted. And the resistance of the Palestinian people has been proved to be even greater than their suffering. So 2007, Hamas forestalls an attempt at a coup by Fatah and with it allied to Israel, backed by the United States.